Hello, this is a video demonstration for Math 121, research project number 4, usually called our Excel project. The first thing you should notice here is we have a Word document that will be one of the documents in Moodle, and we have some data here, some class height. So this is what we're going to be analyzing, running some statistics on various heights. Now you notice there's some values already written down here, and the reason for that is we're going to include our class height data, but we're also going to include these random data points just to make the graphs and statistics a little more interesting, because if you have a small data set, there's not as much to interpret. And then there's a bunch of questions on here that we'll answer as we go through the Excel project. So let's go ahead and open up Excel. And I have previously gone in and labeled my first cell A1, calling that, those are my heights, and I'm just randomly plugged in those values, 157, 160, 165, all the way down to 176. So this is 25 data points. And now we want to run some descriptive statistics on it. And normally Excel, it has a lot of programs embedded in it, but a lot of them are dormant, and they don't pop up when you load it, because if it ran everything, it would take forever to load. So what we need to do is go over to File, and we go down to Options and Add-ins. And what you need to look for, here's the active applications, and then the inactive ones are below here. Now, I've already loaded my analysis tool pack, so it's in the active section, but yours is going to be located in the inactive. So you want to locate the analysis tool pack, and then just hit go, and then you'll be instructed to click OK, as you see here. We don't need this analysis tool pack VBA, just the first one, analysis tool pack. Click OK, and then it will be loaded. And then you're going to notice that over here in the Data tab, over to the far right, you're going to see this little tab for Data Analysis. And that's what we want to use for this Excel project. So if I click Data Analysis, you see here we have a whole host of different things we can do to analyze our data. And many of these are outside the scope of the course, but we want to look at descriptive statistics. So I click OK. In the input range, these are the things I'm actually going to be analyzing. So with the cursor clicking there, I'm going to go over and it's really easy, just click on the A. And that's going to highlight all the values in column A. Okay? And notice it's kind of ambiguous here because it's just saying everything in A. The next thing we want is to click on this, because we called our first cell heights, so that is a label in the first row. Sometimes people just start with the numbers and they don't have a label, but we definitely have a label, so we click on that. And then down here for the output, where do we want these descriptive statistics to be placed? So I usually click on this first one to keep it on the same sheet. I don't want it to open up a new worksheet or a new workbook. And I'll just move this over a little bit. Put the cursor down here, so it's clicking. It's waiting for a value, and then just randomly pick a spot over here. So I picked 05, or that cell, and that's just a random cell out to the right. And then the last thing we need to click is the summary statistics. Okay, and once I click OK, you'll see it takes a second, and I'm going to expand this out here so I can kind of read what we have here. It gives us all of our descriptive statistics. It has our mean, and then it's got things we don't really know about, like standard error. We don't know what that means. It's got the median and mode, which we want. It's got the standard deviation, which we've done by hand, but this, as you can see how quickly it calculates it. Variance, which is just, very similar to standard deviation, but we really only need standard deviation. We're not going to talk about kurtosis or skewness, but we do want the range, right? That's the difference between the smallest and the largest. It's got our minimum, our maximum, and then we're interested in the count. That means we have 25 data points. So now if I go back to the Word document, I can actually answer some of these questions relatively easily. What is the smallest data value? Well, and the largest for A and B, I just go back to here. Well, there it is. The minimum is 120, the maximum is 182. And then it says, what is the class width? Now this is actually referring to the histogram. So we're going to actually make a histogram. And to do that, we're going to, first of all, we're going to order our data points from smallest to largest. So I'm going to highlight all these values, all 25 of them. And if you go back to home, you'll see over here it says sort and filter. So I'm going to sort from smallest to largest. Click OK. And I just realized that I must have misentered this data point. 120 is is a really small value. So I'm just going to change it so it's kind of fits some of the other ones. I'm going to make it 151. Okay. Now that's going to make my descriptive statistics a little different, and I should probably run this a second time, which I'll do again, which is actually a pretty good review. So I'm going to clear this out and run it one more time. So let's go to data, data analysis, descriptive statistics, click OK. It's still going to do everything in column A, labels in the first row, output range, everything remains the same, summary statistics, click OK. And now you can see that when we got rid of that data point of 120, now it looks more reasonable. The smallest one's 151, the largest is 182, and a range of 31 is much more reasonable. Okay, so now let's go to actually create the histogram. Now one of the things of the histogram is we have to create an interval for the horizontal axes. So that's going to group together similar height values. And another term for intervals is bins. So I'm going to go up here and type in bins. And the way that Excel defines these, so you might have an interval from, say, 151 to 155. That's an interval. It's going to put everything from 151 to 155 in it. So the way we want to define this is with the largest value of that interval. So I'm going to type in 155 there. And that particular bin collects everything from 151 to 155. And notice there's 5 values there. 151, 152, 153, 154, and 155. So that is what it means by the class width. The width of the interval is 5. So I'm going to click back to this Word document, and that is the answer there. What is the class width? Well, that is 5. So now back to Excel. Let's put all our bins in. So we're going to need a bin that collects from 151 to 155. We're also going to need another one because it's from 156 to 160. We're going to need one that goes up to 165, one that goes to 170, and 175, and 180. And I say, is this high enough? Is this going to capture all of them? Well, I look over here and I say, oh, the maximum is 182. And keep in mind, 180 only captures things from 176 to 180, so I need one more bin, 185. Okay? And a lot of times students mix up, they think there's a correlation between this particular cell, A2, and this value right here. But these are really independent of these particular cells over here. This is just saying we want the bins 155 up to 185. So you don't need to continue writing bin values down there. That's a common mistake. Okay, we're ready to create our histogram. So we go back to our data analysis tab. We find the histogram and click OK. Now the input range, this is very similar to what we did before for the descriptive statistics. I go and highlight A. Okay, the bin range, I put the cursor right there where the bin range is asking, and I click on the B. And again, there are labels in the first row, heights and bins, so we're going to have that there. The output range, well, where are we going to put that output range? I'm going to put the cursor there so it's waiting for a value. And I want this histogram to be produced maybe down here. Okay? And I want to also put in the chart output. So check that chart output. Now I click OK. Now you'll notice it looks like the program looks like it's about to lock up, but it just takes a minute or so to produce the histogram. And we'll give it a second. Some computers it takes longer than others. waiting. I think it's time to upgrade my computer. But this is not unusual. I've seen it take up to 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, it looks like it. Oh, here it is, finally. Okay, so the first thing that it produces is a frequency chart. And here are bins. So let's take a look at this. So the bin 155. Now remember, that represented the interval from 151 to 155. And there's 3 values that fall in that category. Let's check it with our data. Are there 3 from 151 to 155? Yep. There's 1, 2, and 3. And 156 will go in the next bin, and so forth. So let's go back to our frequency table now. And we can see we have this nice little distribution, 3 values in the first bin, 5 and 3 and so forth. And I want to show you, there's a couple questions in the Word document. So now we can go to Part D. It says, assuming class widths are equal, and we know they're equal to 5, what are the lower and upper class limits for the third class? Well, the third class for mine is at 165. So therefore, I know that the lower limit would be 161, and the upper limit's 165. And there are 3 values in that interval. So I would type in here 161, then 165, and then 3 values within that class. And then it says, what percentage of the recorded data values are in the third class? Well, we just counted. There's 3 of them in that interval. And how many total data points are there? Well, if I go back up to my descriptive statistics, I can see the count. There's 25. So therefore, it would be 3 divided by 25, which is 12%. So I would write 12% right for part F. And if I continue to go down, it says which class contains the fewest data values. Well, I can just pull that up really quickly. And it looks like this last one, the interval from 181 to 185, has the fewest data values. And part H, it's just looking for some of those descriptive statistics, the mean, the standard deviation, and the range, which we already talked about. And then it's got the min, the median, and the max. Those are all in there. And the only thing that isn't in there is Q1 and Q3. So let's go ahead and figure out what those are. Keep in mind, we haven't talked about the histogram yet. We'll get to that eventually. But we want to calculate Q1. So I'm just going to call this cell Q1 because I want a label for it. And to get the first quartile, what we do is we want to put our cursor up here, and the key is we want to start with an equal sign because Excel is now looking for a formula. And we type in quartile, parenthesis, and then it's going to look for some values. So I want to get all of the values in from A2, let's try that again. From A2, it's going to hold down the left button, and it's going to go on all the way down to A26, and now I have a comma, and you can see there's choices. I can either type in a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. But I don't need 0 because that's the minimum value. That's sitting right here. That's 151. I don't need the 2 because the 2 is the median, and the median is sitting right here at 168. And I don't need a 4. That's the maximum. That's 182. What I'm looking for is the first quartile and the third quartile. So all I have to do is type 1, close the parenthesis, and hit enter. And now I'm looking at the 25th percentile or the first quartile, 158. I'll do the same thing for Q3. I type in equals quartile. And again, we had to capture everything from A2 all the way down to A26. Comma, and then we want the third quartile, that's the 3. So 3, and close the parenthesis, and there it is at 175. Okay, so now I can finish putting in all the values into my Word document, the min, the Q1 that I just found, the median, and the Q3 that I found, and the max. And that's going to allow us to help to draw a box plot with whiskers by hand. And that's in the PowerPoint instructions to do that. But the last thing we need to do in this research project is clean up our histogram. So I'm just going to make it a little bigger and scroll down a little bit. Okay, the first thing you notice with this histogram is that there's space between the bars. And that's true for a bar graph, but not for a histogram. So all you're going to do is hover over one of the bars and right-click, and you're going to see Format Data Series. And the first thing that pops up here is we have the series options, but we're interested in this gap width. We want no gap. So I'm going to put that down to 0, close it out, and you can see we have no gap now. So that makes it look nice. And we're also going to do one more thing to the bars. We're going to right-click when you hover over it. We're going to add data labels. And you can see there it is. And that matches up with the frequency, the 3534, 3534 for each of the values. It just makes it look nice. We're almost done. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to hover over bins and just click on that, left click. And these aren't really bins. They represent our heights. So we're going to type in heights there. And then we know it's a histogram, but we want to give it maybe a better title. So I'm going to put my last name and the course title, MAT 121. Click off of it, and there is our histogram. Now I know there's some more instructions about the alignment for the 155, and I'm not going to require that, but if we were to do that, you right-click over one of these numbers and format axes. And you can see over here, you have an alignment option down here. And what we want to do is change the angle. Now, as I click on this, you'll see the numbers on that horizontal axis move. And the reason for that is because the reason why we might want to do this, I'm actually going to increase it up to, I think, 45. I think that's what is recommended for this one. So there's 45. And you can see what happens when I change it to 45 degrees. It kind of moves this 155 from the center spot kind of over to the right, because remember the 155 is the upper class limit. I think this is an added little piece that's unnecessary, but I do think the reason for that is to show that this value right here, where I have the cursor, actually represents 155. This value here is 160. This is 165, and so forth. So it's kind of hard to determine, you know, where you are on this horizontal axis. So this helps a little bit when you change the alignment. But I believe that's it. So thank you for watching, and good luck.